Okay, so if everyone wants to grab a seat, guys, we will get started, because I know that people have other things to do and childcare and whatever. First of all, I'm Judy and I'm a past president of FAA, and I thank you all for coming tonight. We're really thrilled to have speakers talking about a really important topic. On the back, for those of you who are interested, in March, we will have demystifying the IEP process. And our speaker will be Dr. Melinda Doctor, who is here at Westmoreland. So for those of you, I'm fortunate I have no more IEPs, but for those of you who are still doing IEPs and want to do this, this will be a great presentation, I'm sure. So be sure and pick up a flyer in the back. Also, if you like getting your notices in the mail, join FAA. There's brochures in the back that explain how to join. If you join, you do in fact get a mailing every month, get into all of our events for free. And we stay in touch with you. Lastly, if you know people that aren't here tonight but want to hear this presentation, we do record all our presentations. So if you've missed any of our presentations in the last year, go on our website, go under past events, and you will see videos of all of our speakers and you can listen to the presentations. So I encourage you to do so. And Clarence, you're going to talk next, right? Okay, I'm going to introduce Clarence, who's on our board, who has one or two more announcements. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Clarence. I'm on the board. I'm the vice president, and I just wanted to ask a question. What goes together, or what are these things? How do these go together? Letting transitions in adulthood, letting go and smoothing transitions in adulthood, communicating life on the spectrum and the ups and downs of that, and non-communication, non-verbal communication. Can you, anyone? Okay, I guess that's a bad joke.
I know the answer, but I'm biased.
Okay, so
Repeat it again, because we lost the first part. Right?
Okay, this is a small joke. And if I had to say that's a small joke, then it's not a joke. Okay? Now, all I'm saying is just reiterating what Judy said, that we have all of our past or the last year's past speakers are on our website. They're also on our YouTube page. So this was supposed to be on the screen. So if you please like us on our Facebook page and go to our website, and we just want to make sure that we get all this information out to all our community, because I think that these speakers in our resource meetings have been so valuable, and they were valuable to me. I think that we can expand it by just not having everyone here in the audience experiencing it. We can go beyond it. So please go to the website. You can go to the website and go to the YouTube page and like us on Facebook. Okay?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening. How's everybody doing? Okay, great. So I'm Patricia Herrera, and I'm on the board of Foothill Autism Alliance, and I've been one of the founding members. And I previously worked for Lanterman Regional Center, so I have a very solid background in special needs, and now I work for 211 LA County. So it gives me great pleasure to have an amazing topic for you this evening. This is a topic that's very close to my heart, because when I was at Lanterman Regional Center, self-determination was coming up. And you know, there was talks about having this, and a lot of people were saying it will never happen. And so it has happened. And what's so exciting is that we have members of the team, because they call it the Dream Team, members of the Dream Team that made it happen. And they're parents who have made a difference, who said, yes, we'll have self-determination, and made it to make this happen. And so it gives me great pleasure to introduce Judy Mark. Judy Mark is a fearless advocate for children, for families, for the community. She serves on several boards. She's on the board of California Disability Rights. She's on the board of Autism Speaks.
No.
no, I'm sorry. Autism Society of Los Angeles. Sorry, Autism Speaks all day today, so I am so sorry. Yes, it's the Autism Society of Los Angeles, and serves on the Government Relations Committee. Or she's the co-chair of the Government Relations. Judy also led the community response to changing the Disneyland accommodations for persons with disabilities and co-chaired the Jewish Federation of LA Israel's mission exploring programs for adults with disability. Judy has a tremendous background in advocacy, focusing on immigrant rights. And so, and she's with Kathy Liu. Kathy Liu is going to join her, and they're going to do a presentation together. And Kathy brings lots of information on the pilot that occurred, because this is not new to California. This has been going on for a number of years. And Kathy was involved in the pilot with Eastern Los Angeles Regional Center. So this is amazing that we have them here today. And so please join me in welcoming them tonight for this presentation.
Thank you, everybody. What an amazing turnout on a weeknight when I know you have kids to deal with and life to deal with. I'm very into question and answer, respond, hearing what your concerns are, because I have been speaking about self-determination for a couple of years now, and our law was passed actually a year and a half ago. So I've been speaking about it for a long time, but each time I speak to a different audience, I learn something new from the questions that are asked. We're in the process right now of developing resource materials for people, outreach materials, and your questions really inform us. When you don't understand a certain concept that I'm explaining, then I realize, okay, I have to explain it differently. It's my fault that I'm not explaining it clearly, not your fault that you're not understanding it, because it is a complex issue. Very important for you to understand the voluntary program. No one can be forced into self-determination, and no one can be forced out of self-determination. All right, it's completely voluntary. If people choose to stay in traditional system, they can. It's based on a pilot, which I'm going to have Kathy talk about since she was more intimately involved. So this is not a new thing. Do you want to just briefly talk about it?
Yeah, we were talking about the regional center starting out as a pilot. Did you know that we had a 15-year pilot for self-determination already? Some of you are nodding. So there has been a lot of advocacy to expanding the pilot, but regional center has not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now that with
You want to see the 5 regional centers that were part of it? So it's East LA. It's really the only one in our area. Then there was Tri-Counties, which is like Santa Barbara, San Diego, Kern County Regional Center, and then Redwood Coast, which is way in Northern California.
So all the data shows extremely high family consumer satisfaction, which is to be expected. However, there has not been an extension because regional centers could decide for themselves that there's not a need for, although there's been a lot of parents requesting it, it has remained at the same level as it started. In fact, East LA Regional Center, where I had supported and served families on self-determination as a service broker, now the term will be independent facilitator. The pilot has gotten smaller because as people leave or as people die, we don't always replace them. So
And there's
they're actually
300 people
shrinking.
on the waiting list at East LA Regional Center to be in self-determination. And everybody started out, each of the 5 regional centers started out with 30. And as somebody moved or dropped out for whatever reason, they can also become ineligible because you can't live in a group setting and still be part of the pilot of self-determination. It's a little bit different with the permanent program, but they never replaced them. So it went from having a maximum of 200 at one point to now it has like 108. Because they were motivated.
And they don't
They
have
were
to,
motivated.
because it was a pilot.
Why do you guys think the regional centers wouldn't like self-determination?
Control.
No, it doesn't, it actually costs the same or less money. It's not about money.
Control.
Control. They would never say that. In fact, if you ever talk to a regional center, they're like, oh, no, we think regional center's a good option for some people. But I also hear families saying, I'd like, self-determination for my child, and they're like, oh, I don't think it's right for you. So we know that they're not happy about this. I personally was taken on a tour of one of the regional centers by the executive director for an entire day so that he could show me how incredibly complex the regional center system is and all the different services and everything, and that why would we need, or how could self-determination work? We as a parent couldn't possibly have that breadth of knowledge that they all have there. So, I have a PhD on my child, I can tell you that much. And you guys don't. You may be an MD or you may have a psychology degree, but I know my child better. So, all right, so let me keep going. The traditional system will remain for probably the vast majority of members, even once self-determination is really up and running. There will be a lot of people who stay with it. I think if you look into the future 20, 25 years, there will be a very significant percentage on self-determination, but people don't like change, and so I think it's going to take a while to really shift the system over. All right, so the timeline is really important. So it's going to really take a while. So the law was passed and signed by Governor Brown in October of 2013, and it's taken us. We're getting closer, but we're not even remotely close at this point in implementing it. So the law stated that the state must get what's called matching funds. Has anybody ever heard the term waiver? Okay, you probably don't even know what that means. It's like loosely thrown about, and nobody ever explains to parents what it means. So just very quickly, so that you're all really educated on this stuff, back in the 70s, the only way for states to get federal money for people with developmental disabilities is if they lived in institutions, which is ridiculous, because then there was an incentive for states to put people in institutions. So the federal government realized at that time we have to change this, so they created what they called a waiver. And what the waiver said, this is a waiver not only for people with developmental disabilities, it's a waiver for veterans, it's a waiver for senior citizens, that people should be able to live in the community, whether they're children with their parents or live in an apartment with supports, so that because they ultimately will be cheaper for them to live in the community than to live in an institution. And so this waiver has now been around for all these years. And it's called the Home and Community-Based Services Waiver. And what that means is for every dollar that we spend on you or your children, 50 cents of that is matched by the federal government. So that's really important. We get billions of dollars every year from the federal government for regional centers. And so we really want to ensure that we continue to get that. So the other thing is, to get our law passed, the one compromise we needed to have was that it couldn't cost any more money than we're currently spending, which means that we have to bring in those federal monies. You should know that the people in the pilot were not taking federal dollars for their pilot. They were getting matching money, and now we're going to get it for them because they're going to be folded into this new program.
I was also going to add that on the pilot, the cost has been consistently lower. Every year there's a reduction.
Because when your outcomes are better, you start spending less money. It's remarkable. Although the regional centers will tell you it's going to cost more. Every study has shown throughout the country, we're the only state in the United States that has a self-determination law, which means the only way to get rid of it is to pass another law to get rid of it. But there are other states, Arizona, Minnesota, Michigan has the biggest in the country until ours becomes bigger. And a few other states have self-determination administratively, meaning the governor has, maybe 3 governors ago, but it continues on because it's shown throughout the country and throughout the world. They have it in Australia, in certain parts of Europe. It's always shown to be a cost savings. So what's going to be going on this year is that regional centers are supposed to get started planning. So because the program goes into place, the day that the waiver is approved is the day that the first consumer can go on to self-determination. But of course, there are some regional centers, many of you belong to them, who are saying, we're not even gonna get started thinking about it until the waiver's approved. Which means, if you're from my regional center, which is Westside, where we've been planning already for 5 months, the day the waiver is approved will be the day the first kid is on it, or the first adult is on it. And if you're North LA Regional Center, you will be at least 6 months to 9 months behind us.
And there's also some regional center in between, right?
Yeah.
Some regional center have started an advisory board, so I am a member of our self-determination advisory board at East LA Regional Center.
But they haven't met yet.
But we have not met.
And nor has, she's an appointee, we'll talk about the advisory board, she's an appointee from the local State Council on Developmental Disabilities Regional Office. But half of them need to be appointed by East LA Regional Center, they haven't appointed anybody.
Yeah, so once again, every regional center is
different.
doing their.
In Los Angeles County, Westside is the only one that exists. Inland is gonna start very soon in Riverside, in San Bernardino, but they'll probably be up and running by April. But Westside is the only one actually functioning in the whole state. So here's like a critical piece. So for the first 3 years, we're doing a phase-in period. It's not gonna be open to everyone. There's going to be a lottery for the first 3 years for 2,500 consumers, and I will show you how this is gonna work in a moment. But that date of the 3 years starts on the day the waiver is approved. So if the waiver is approved on June 30th of this year, then the clock starts ticking, and 3 years from June 30th, so June 30th, 2018, it will be every consumer in the state of California, if they are Medi-Cal, will be eligible. And actually, I should be clear. You have to be Medi-Cal, but there are still exceptions. If you're undocumented or you can't be in Medi-Cal, you can still go into self-determination. So there are definitely exceptions, but if you're, but in the vast majority of cases, you have to be Medi-Cal eligible. All right, so who is eligible? Obviously, you have to have a developmental disability. You have to currently or be receiving regional center services or be a new regional center consumer. So if you are not part of the regional center system, you cannot get self-determination. A lot of people think this is their way in if they weren't certified as eligible previously, but it's not going to help that. I mean, this is not going to fix every problem with the system. You basically have to be over age 3, and this is because of the funding mechanisms that come in. Personally, I don't think a baby should be on self-determination anyways, because I think that there's certain things that families need to know, but so you cannot live in an institution and be part of self-determination. You can live at home, in the community, in a group home, but only in certain types of group homes. If you live in a group home where you go as a group to the mall, you go as a group to work, you go as a group to a day program, that's not living an individual self-determined life. So you can live with roommates, with staff that you're calling a group home, but each of you should have your individualized programs during the day. Or else you can't be in self-determination. And by the way, you can't be, in 4 years, you can't be in the regional center system either. The whole system's changing, but I'm not gonna get into that. I'm happy to come back at some point and talk to you about the dramatic changes that are happening in our system over the next 4 years, which has nothing to do with self-determination. But there are new rules coming down from the feds, but I don't wanna get into that because it's actually really complicated. You have to be a responsible participant because you're using taxpayer dollars. You can't be like spending money to go to Tahiti. You have to, use it to meet IPP goals. And I'm not kidding. I went to Tahiti with a group of 40 people, all children with autism, in last April. And so that is actually a serious example. You could not have used your self-determination money to go on that trip. But I guess the rest of it afterwards. Make a case for it, I don't know. Sorry. And so you should know that everybody's eligible as part of the regional center system. I always try to make sure that people understand that regardless of your education, your ethnicity, immigration status, you are still eligible. Okay, so the 3-year phase-in period. So this is really important because there's lots of misinformation out there by the regional centers on this. And this is accurate as of today. I guess it could change in 2 weeks at the next meeting, but this is accurate as today. So each regional center receives a specific number, a percentage of that 2,500 based on what their percentage is of the total population of consumers in the state of California. So if you are a regional center that normally has 7% of all consumers in the state, you're gonna have 7% of the 2,500.